Hi, everyone. I'll give a couple more minutes for people to join and we will get started. All righty, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Welcome to another installation of the web series on software product management. Let's get started. I am going to share my screen and I will introduce myself and all that good stuff. All righty. Just a second. So our topic today is, do you have a winning product strategy? Here's a little bit about me. I've been doing software product management since around 2000, mainly in really big shops like IBM, Microsoft. I now live in Germany because I worked for SAP for a while here. I now have my own training and consulting firm, do foundation level trainings for folks. At the very end, I'll take 2 minutes to tell you a little bit more about what I do, but we've got a lot of stuff to cover today. So I will jump in. This is our agenda. We will talk about what is strategy in the first place and what is product strategy. We'll talk about why it's important. You probably think you know. I may have something to add there. We'll talk about how you should capture your product strategy. Where should it be? What format? That kind of thing. And then we'll really dig into the criteria that tell you that you have a winning strategy. And the background is, I've worked at a lot of big companies. I do a lot of consulting. And strategy is one of these terms that everybody uses, but nobody defines. People have an intuition about what it is, but there's not a consistent definition in most organizations. So it tends to be really underspecified. There's not enough product strategy, or there's not enough strategy at the organization level. It's in people's heads, it's in scraps of paper, it's in a presentation here or there, but it's not this coherent thing. So if it's not documented, it's very tough to follow. It's very unlikely that it is going to consistently drive behavior. And when I start working with consulting clients, I find that most people, let's say individual contributor level employees, can't speak to strategy at all. I ask them, so what is your product strategy? And they get this strange look on their face and they think for a while. And then they may have a little bit of data here or there that they throw out, but they can't really speak to it in an intelligent way. And I found in these consulting engagements, a really great question to ask people, from individual contributors all the way to executives, is, do you think you have a winning strategy? That usually gets the gears turning. So let's define the term, what is a strategy? And to do that, we have to back up a little bit, because I look at strategy as in a broader context. And I came across this model several years ago. It's called the business motivation model. It comes from OMG, and it's this framework for describing how business plans can be organized. So it has a meta model that defines a core set of concepts around this idea, what motivates us as an organization or as a business. So let's take a look at some of the concepts. First, they divide these key concepts between means and ends. So a mean is how you do something, how you achieve something, and the end is the thing you achieve. And those are not the same thing. So as you will see, things like vision and mission related, but not anywhere close to the same thing. So the means, our mission, that's we'll define that. That's what I do every day. Strategy and tactics, we've all heard those terms, but now we know that those are ways that we do something. And the ends that we achieve are described by the vision, goals, and objectives. So let's look at those definitions. A vision is this kind of ultimate state that we would like to achieve, and it may be unattainable. It may still be the right goal, or the right vision, even though we're never going to completely realize it. The mission tells me what I do every day. So pay attention to how those things are different. Vision is where I want to be. The mission is what I do today. So they're related. What I do today should be taking me toward my vision, but they're not the same thing. The next concept is a goal. And this is this kind of general thing that I would like to achieve. It's not specific. It's not necessarily measurable. I just want to achieve something. And in a moment, we're going to go through a nice example. An objective is something that I can measure. So an objective is time-bound. It's those SMART criteria, which you see at the bottom of the screen: specific, measurable, achievable, those kinds of things. And then I have a strategy. A great way to summarize strategy is that it is a plan of action or a course of action. And that course of action can be decomposed into smaller parts that we will call tactics. So this example comes right out of the specification. It's not software related, but I think that's good. It's very simple and gives us an idea of what a motivation model can look like. So in this case, we have a car rental company, and their vision is to be the brand of choice in the countries they serve. Sounds good to me. When people have a choice in these countries, they want them to pick their company. What is the mission? They provide car rental services, blah, blah, blah. So the first one, the vision tells me where I want to be. The mission tells me what I do every day. Their strategy is to operate nationwide, to focus on major airports. So we've already learned quite a bit about this company. This is their plan of action. This is how they're going to become the brand of choice. They will operate in entire countries. They will focus on airports, and they will compete head-to-head with the big guys. That can be decomposed into tactics, little things we do that help us, execute our strategy. And from the spec, they talk about encouraging rental extensions. That would be one way to do it. Didn't resonate with me. I made one up, which is they will compete aggressively for one-way traffic between airports. So you fly into one airport, you want to fly out of another. They want that business because if you've ever seen it, it's pretty expensive. A goal is this general thing. Here they want to be a premium brand, and they want to be positioned with the big brands. How are we going to measure success? How will we determine that we're actually moving towards that goal? We have objectives. And here you can see this has all the criteria. It's time-bound. They're going to look at AC Nielsen, and they want to be in the top 6 rental car companies in all the countries, within the European community. So just a snapshot. Typically, there would be more tactics, there would be more goals, there would be more objectives. But very few organizations that I work with have their motivation structured this way and kind of in this coherent form. And here's some of the relationships between the concepts. I won't go through all of them, but that's part of the value of the spec. It defines these basic concepts and how they relate to each other. So you can see that a vision is made operative by the mission. Goal amplifies the vision, or an objective quantifies the goal. I would seriously recommend you download this spec, take a look at it and read it. Really eye-opening, powerful stuff. And here we have a quote. Wouldn't be a business presentation if we didn't quote Sun Tzu. And he said, "All men can see these tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved." Beautiful statement. Think about that in the context of your organization. So we've defined strategy. What is a product strategy? Pretty obviously. I really consider it this business motivation that applies to your product or to your solution. And for the purposes of our talk today, a product is this thing that I build. I ship it to multiple customers in the same form. And a solution is something, it's an aggregate. So I put a couple of products together. I put some services together. I'll use the term solution every once in a while. That's what that is. And what we find is there should be a hierarchy of motivation. Starting at the corporate level, think of that as the enterprise level. You might have business units. They need a motivation model. Solutions that you're building, which may comprise products, Each needs its motivation. And ideally, that would go all the way down to the individual level, because the goal is for you to be able to look at what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve during the year, and convince yourself that you're helping move the company where it wants to go. So this seems like a lot of work, but really important. We really need to have a clear picture of where we want to go and how we will get there and how we will measure success. Strategy is, most people just accept that it's important. But here are specific reasons that we should think about in terms of the importance of strategy. And first is, a strategy is good if it actually gives us decision support, if it can help us decide what to do, or maybe just as importantly, what not to do. And realize that people down to the individual contributor level are making decisions every day. If you're a product manager, development is out there implementing, no matter how precisely you've specified something, they are making decisions, and I've heard that characterized as micro decisions. I like that idea. Little things about what they put here, how flexible it is, how things work. And those decisions should be informed by a really shared, coherent strategy. And then another purpose that we see that it's important is it's for alignment. We saw that across the different levels of the organization. And towards the end of the presentation, we'll talk about other types of alignment as well. There are some really key process intersections. We're all executing processes every day, whether we realize it or not. The strategy can help us make better decisions relative to those processes. So a clear example is requirements engineering or requirements management. How do I know what's in? How do I know what's out? What's relevant? What I should do? What I should not do? Part of that comes from the market. Part of it has to come from my business motivation, what I want to accomplish as an organization or as a product. Marketing planning is really important. I have to make decisions about how I'm going to spend my money, what markets I want to go into, and that needs to be reflected in the strategy. Also, release planning and road mapping. I need a vision. I need objectives, and that helps me determine, for example, what my release heartbeat will be. How often do I need to ship? How much functionality do I need to put into a release? And for example, what's the innovation bar? How much do I want to innovate along the course of the roadmap? And of course, portfolio planning is really important as well. This is more at the organizational level, and the idea is that I look at the strategies of all the things in my portfolio, and because I have data and because it's structured consistently, I can make better decisions about where I should invest normally my development dollars. So the question always comes up, how should I capture my product strategy? Should it be in a document? Should it be, I don't know, in a mind map? I've seen them done there. Should it be in Excel? Well, we will talk about the general structure, the things you have to keep, and you need to understand your organization and figure out the ideal artifact. But what we're talking about here is really taking the strategy, creating a strategy document. And that is one coherent single artifact. It can point to other things and probably should, but one place where I can go to really get the meat of the strategy. And as a software product manager, it is your accountability to create the strategy for your product. It's not executive leadership. It's not development. You need to step up and show that leadership. You've seen the structure of the motivation model. I'm going to take you through an example. We're going to talk about how you can capture it. And I hope that's your key takeaway from this webcast, that this is something you need to stand up and do. You're not going to do it by yourself, but you have to lead the effort. What are the goals of creating this strategy document? We want this one-stop shopping. We need to inspire the reader so that they can get behind us, so that marketing, development, sales, executive leadership, everybody understands where we're going and we're all pulling in the right direction. You need it to do alignment, which we talked a little bit about. And you should remember that typically these are inward-facing documents. This isn't something you would give unattended to a customer or to a partner. You might share parts of it, but the document itself tends to be fairly sensitive and really internal. And you should see if your organization has rules around that. So here's an outline of what we can put in a product strategy document. This comes from a syllabus from the International Software Product Management Association, ISPMA. I'm on the board of ISPMA. You can join and get this syllabus free. This is the outline. as it is in the syllabus, I'll speak to it in terms of some of the concepts we've talked about. You need a product vision. I would expand that to say you need to describe your business motivation for the product. There's a section on product definition where from various aspects you describe what the product is. You need to talk about target markets, what the key segments are, how you deliver your product to the market. Are there services involved? What's your strategy there? How you position the product? How should people think of your product relative to, for example, competitive products? Sourcing, where are you going to get the things that you need? The money, the people, the software, components. Should you build or buy? Those kinds of things. You need a business plan, which basically is a summary of the financials. And even if you're in a big company, there should be a business plan. You should be able to demonstrate to people why investment in the product was worthwhile. Some of those benefits may not be financial, but you need a business plan. And then a roadmap, because the roadmap shows how I'm going to deliver on my vision. So what I would like to do now, I will switch to another document. I'm going to show you how you can capture a strategy in what I call the strategy presentation. So I've spent a lot of time creating these things in Word. I've had clients, for example, that do the same thing, and I think that can be a great format. But I would say to get started, you should create a presentation. Forces you to think in a very structured way, keeps it brief. It's obviously perfect for then presenting it to get buy-in, and then you can decide if, in a second step, you should expound upon it in a Word document, or your organization may have rules about that. I am going to switch to an example. And this is obviously not completely ready for prime time. I built this just to give you an idea of the structure, what these things could look like, make it a little less abstract, but I'll point out, maybe where it's incomplete. But I think this is a great way to start. If you don't have a documented motivation model today, a strategy, create one of these decks, and I will make this available to you after the webcast. So the first thing I would do is keep a history of the document. Might not display this slide, but that's important. What changes have you made? Sometimes you're doing this in a team. This is the table of contents. We'll talk about the product team, do an overview, talk about the business motivation, service strategy. We'll look at the roadmap. So I'm going to actually take you through the content for each of these sections. Here's the product team, just really convenient to capture this, helps people out. Anybody reading this, if they have a question then about quality or about scope, they know who to go to. There's a solution overview. Once again, a solution is just a group of things. I created this for one of the courses that I give where it's more focused on complex solutions instead of individual products, but it doesn't really differ structurally from what you would do for a product strategy document. And I'm a big believer in starting with the problem space, understanding very crisply what problems you solve before you even talk about the solution. And here you can see that for this company, there are some problems in the market that they think they can address. One of them is it's not easy to monitor big areas from a security perspective manually. It's hard to send people out and surveil an entire city. It can be really expensive to have people doing surveillance 24/7. Over time, surveillance needs change. So we already see that we're probably this company or this solution has something to do with surveillance. That's like video cameras watching and detecting things that happen. So we start with the problem space, and here we just have a very brief description, a one-liner to tell the reader what the solution or what the product is. And here you can see it's a surveillance solution, uses video camera, creates operational insights. So in one sentence, even if I've never seen anything about this solution, I start getting an idea. Next, we show a use case. I think that's really valuable to let people kind of get an idea for how this thing is operating in the wild. And this is, pretty common. We've got an operator who goes to, a monitor. He logs into the system, and somewhere in the city, a crowd is forming. People are grouping together, and there happens to be a video camera on that street. And their analytics, their software running on the camera that knows when it sees people, knows when they're coming together, and it can detect that a crowd is forming, because sometimes that is not a good thing. If I think about urban security, a crowd forming might be something I want to know about. Then there's a software layer that does intelligence. It pulls a bunch of information together. It finds out that there was a rock concert that ended 2 hours earlier. It knows that it's a weekday and that after 10 o'clock, there shouldn't be big crowds forming. So the camera software detects that, sends an event back to the control center, and that gets displayed to the operator, who looks at it and says, wow, there's a crowd forming. What do I do now? And then all kinds of things can happen. You may have what are called con ops, or a guide that he can walk through to respond. He may call the police, and then he can use the video cameras to monitor what's going on. He may want to back up the tape and look what led to this crowd forming, those kinds of things. But these are the kinds of use cases that we're talking about. I think it's a great idea to share a architecture. This is really high level, it's logical, but to somebody who's not really familiar with your product or solution, shows them kind of how it's used. This is not a work of art. I threw it together pretty easily or pretty quickly, but you can see in the operational environment, we've got a bunch of cameras and a network that connects to this control center where we have workstations and mobile apps and all those kinds of things. Details aren't important. Create a architecture that shows people how your product or solution operates in the wild. You should talk about the delivery model. Is it on-prem? Is it delivered as a service? Is it a combination of both? Is physical infrastructure required? All those kinds of things. And realize we're not capturing tons of data, just bullets at this point. Later, or in the speaker notes, we can go into a lot of detail, but for now, we want the reader to understand kind of generally what's going on. Sourcing is really important. Where are you getting the resources you need to develop the product, execute on your strategy, and realize your vision? So we can talk a little about where do we get our technical components, where do we get the software? We may build some of it, we may buy some of it. What is our development capacity? Do we need to go outside and get contractors? Those kinds of things. Now we'll talk about the business motivation. We talked about that at an abstract level. We have a vision for our solution, and don't underestimate how powerful that can be. Define a vision for your product. Tell people where you want it to be in 3 or 5 years. And here we just have the key goals and objectives. And you can see on the top line, we have a goal, and then we have very clear objectives. So we, like most companies, would like to increase revenue and margin. We see the 2016 and 2017 goals. We can see that we want a bigger contribution to our revenue from the private sector. Today, we do a lot of public sector things. So call out what the top objectives and goals are. And then you might be able to link to another document where you go into a lot more detail, where you describe the vision, where you talk about the mission, where you have a more complete set of objectives, but summarize them here. Now we'll talk about product scope. Here we have a very quick slide on the functional scope. What's in the box when I get this solution? You can see there's some software, hardware. We sell services. We can operate the solution for our customers. We install it, those kinds of things. Do that for your product or solution as well. Quality scope is not a test plan. It's really the kind of remarkable things, outstanding things about quality. And we can see that for this solution, we need really high availability. We need unbreakable security. We can't have people breaking into our security solution. Makes absolutely no sense, would not be a good thing. Support scope. So what does the support picture look like? Here, I've got 5 bullets. Not rocket science. But in some regions, we have to supply 24/7. Maybe we have a global 24-hour hotline. We have local language help centers, and whatever it is. Capture that here so that people have an idea, and anything else that might be remarkable about the support situation. Maybe a third party provides support for your software. That would be something you could include here. UX scope is, probably what it sounds like. How are people interacting with the software? What are the key entry points? And you can see we have mobile experiences, some of them on iPhone and Android, some just Android. We have a thick client. A lot of things are served on a browser. This gives people an idea of, back to the architecture, about what they can expect. And you might also call out here, for example, we have expert users. So we have a very sophisticated UI, or we have very unsophisticated users, and the UX needs to be super easy to use. Whatever it is, these general things that are remarkable about UX, share them here. Then we want to go outside the firewall, talk about what the key markets are, give insight into what markets we operate in, which segments of the market are most relevant to us. Here, I think I've made a few things up. I think this last statistic, I just typed it in. Normally, you would look at market analysts, industry analyst kinds of publications and figure that out. But here I tell them that we do a lot of private sector work or government work. You might characterize the competitive situation. There you could go into more detail and maybe even have another slide and list the key competitors, what their strengths are. And here we see that, hey, we're in a market that's growing at 12% year over year, that kind of thing. So a couple of slides on the market that give people insight into where you fit in the broader picture. These are the target segments that we're focused on. Geographically, we have these different dimensions. We're looking at urban government facilities, mid-sized cities, those kinds of things. So who are you going after? In the consumer space, it might be affluent males over the age of 60, or kids between 10 and 12, whatever it is. Call out who you're focusing on. Here's a quick overview of the stakeholders that are at each customer. We're in the enterprise space. We're solving complex problems. So there are actually a bunch of stakeholders relative to our product. There are decision makers who decide if they want to buy it. There's operational management at the operations center who's managing the operators we talked about. We have end users. We have administrators. So give people a list of who the key personas are. And you might want to do this before you do the use case that we showed, and maybe have a couple of use cases, one from the end user perspective, one from the administrator perspective. Depends on how important that is to your vision. Idea is not to get too carried away. You can point to a persona document or some other resource, but this gives me an idea who are really the key stakeholders at the customer concerning our product. Product positioning. This has to do with how people think about your product relative to other things. For example, competitive offerings. When people think about you, we remember the rental car company, they wanted to be positioned next to these premium brands. So what we say, if you read this, we want to be innovative and highly cost effective. So it doesn't mean that we necessarily want to be the cheapest solution in the market. We don't want to compete on price. We want to be innovative, but at a price that really creates differentiating value. And one of the things that differentiates us is, that we're flexible. So we have wireless cameras that you can move around. So you can set them up on a park one day, set them up on a street another day, set them up for a sporting event the other day. And we want to be positioned relative to the others as being more mobile, more flexible, those kinds of things. You should think about service strategy. If you're in the consumer space, you may not have services associated with your software product. In the more complex problem space, that's very common. And here you can see that most of the services we provide are aimed around installation configuration. By the way, services are human time and effort. It's not software, it's not hardware, it's people. And we are now developing the capability to go and operate a solution for customers. So if you don't have services as part of your product or as part of the overall offering, you don't need to do this. More complex space, you will. Here are key partners who are helping us do these things. I made up these names. I hope they don't correspond to real companies. That gives me an idea of what kind of our ecosystem looks like, who's helping us deliver value to customers. Now we get into the business. We've talked about what the product is, what segments we're trying to attack. We've talked about kind of what's in the box, what comprises my product, those kinds of things. The business model gives me, this overarching view. I really like the lean canvas. There's also the business model canvas, or you may pick another, kind of format to capture the business model. But here we capture things like the problem and solution, what the segments are, what our unfair advantage is. And at the bottom, we talk about our cost structure. not numbers. What's the cost? And we talk about our revenue streams. How do we make money? So this is a great exercise. Some people think this is just for a startup or some new endeavor. If you have a product today and you don't have a lean canvas, create one. You will learn something. Socialize it with people. Get their input. It will give you higher level perspective on your product and allow you to operate more strategically. And then you should have the numbers. Here, I just took something that I had available. It's part of one of my classes. This is a revenue model where here we're a project-oriented company. So we sell you an entire solution and we deliver it to you, and that can take months. So I just have this very simple model that says we have small, medium, and large deals. How many deals will we do a year? What's the relative worth of those deals? And that gives me some idea of the revenue. And in really big shops, that's probably enough, just articulating how much revenue. Cost tends to be a little more fixed. It's represented by how many developers you have. Smaller company, I mean, ideally you capture the cost too, and you give management some idea or the reader some idea of profitability. This section may be a little more sensitive than some of the others. So you might not give it to everyone, but you should be on top of the business aspects, and this should be consistent with what you showed in the business model canvas and those kinds of things. And then we have the solution roadmap. What are we delivering when? This is super simplified, not particularly attractive. You can do much better, I'm sure. I like these kind of milestone-oriented roadmaps. They're external facing. Today, I see a lot of people using this kind of more Gantt representation. I think that's more inward facing. But here we have 3 releases. Below the milestones, you can see the dates. You should be as general with those as your stakeholders will let you get away with. Each release has a theme. So first we want to do simple event response, then we're going to do intelligence, and then this thing called sensor fusion. And you can see the investments we're going to make at a pretty high level. These aren't really features. These are at a level of abstraction higher, and just shows what I'm going to invest in. We want wireless cameras. We need to refactor some things. So this is an inward-facing roadmap. It's pretty complete. It talks about, you know, some of the more techie things that I need to do. And you can see under intelligence, we'll do adaptable ConOps. That's concept of operations. That's how we respond to things. The details aren't important. You should have a roadmap and a simple representation of it like this that really ties everything together for the reader. I've seen what the solution is. I've seen how we're going to measure success. I know a little bit about the sourcing and those kinds of things. Wow, okay, now I see how they're going to deliver. So I'm going to get out of here and look at, there are another couple of slides, actually just one that's relevant here. And that is resources at the end. You can create links to all kinds of other documents. There's no shortage of those. Maybe a release plan, the marketing plan, the sales plan. So don't cram all that content in one place. Keep it lean. It acts as an index. People read, they kind of get the top-down picture, and then they can drill in based on their interest. So that is an example. It's about 30 slides. It's not exactly small, but it's also not super huge. Somebody could click through this thing. You could record yourself talking to it and make that video available. And you know, it would really help you socialize your strategy with, you know, other folks in the organization. So I think we've basically covered all this stuff, why I do it in a presentation instead of a document at first. Yeah, a lot more convenient, a lot more agile. You can move around. And then as a last step, if your organization requires a document or one of your stakeholders wants like a really fleshed out document, you can create it and you already have the outline on a lot of the content. What should you do with the strategy document once you create it? Socialize it, share it, show it to people, get their input, get their buy-in. Be a leader, show it to executive management and say, this is how I'm going to make you money. Go to development and say, this is what we are going to achieve together. You should have a practice so that it gets updated regularly. Don't do this in January and then somebody looks at it in October and everything has changed. Sometimes there will be a forcing function. Sometimes you just need to put something in your calendar, or there needs to be an organizational practice that we update our strategy document twice a year, whatever it is. publish the least sensitive parts of it in a place where the whole team can get it. I think that's important. If it's in a portfolio, it would be great to be able to go to one location and look at all the product strategies, and then, of course, use it to align. So we've talked about what a strategy is, how we can capture it. We've actually covered a lot of stuff. So this will get recorded. You can go back and look at it. But now we have to ask ourselves the question, do I have a good strategy? How do you know? And the first thing should be kind of obvious. You can look over time, if you measure progress against that strategy, is it working? Am I achieving the business results? Is it driving decisions? Does it come up when we're deciding whether we should do A or B? Do we say, no, 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 we're going to do B because it's more on strategy? But that takes a while. To actually create a strategy, to track it, to have a track record, takes a while. So before, there's some simple things you can look at to know if you have a good strategy. First of all, it has to be written down or it doesn't count in my book. It has to be somewhere where you've really had to think about it and get it on paper. It needs to be complete per the outline that I showed you. It should at least cover the ends that we talked about in the business motivation model, like objective, goal, vision. It needs to be timely, should be consumable. Anybody who is in your target audience should be able to read it and understand it. Shouldn't be so full of marketing terms that technicians don't get it, or so full of technical terms that more functional people don't get it. I think you know that a strategy is good when you can really align it with other strategies or other motivations. And having them all expressed using the same model is super valuable, because you can align goal to goal, objective to objective, those kinds of things. And alignment happens, it's kind of a 360 operation. I can align above me with executive leadership or with solutions that I'm part of, horizontally with other product groups and with other functions in the organization like sales and marketing. So, you know, I have to really think above, below, beside me about who I should align this thing with. And realize your product strategy is just one strategy in potentially a sea of strategies. There are a lot of them, and you need to prioritize and figure out which are the most important ones for you to align with. So we talked about organization above you. There may be a technical strategy. You need to see if there are new technologies coming down the pike that could help your product. There may be a corporate innovation strategy. You need to figure out what the marketing strategy is, the sales strategy. Are you delivering the product in a way that sales is willing to go out and sell it? So a lot of alignment to do. It's an exercise in setting priorities for sure. Some other things to consider. We mentioned some of these before, but does this document inspire the reader? Do they read it and go, yeah, let's go do this. I want to be part of this. Is it realistic, or is it one of those things that you read it and are like, where is this guy living? None of this stuff is going to happen. This doesn't make sense. Does it incorporate elements of non-functional innovation? So not features and functions, but do we have new pricing? Do we have a new business model? If we found out a new way we can market our stuff? And then, you know, it should address some of the critical risks. And that was a section I didn't have in the example, but nothing wrong with, you know, in terms of your strategy, what are the risks? What could derail my strategy and prevent me from realizing my vision? A few practices around the strategy. Have this template, whether it's in PowerPoint, Word, whatever. We talked about starting with the presentation. Put key information, you know, kind of executive summary, the key stuff in 5 to 10 slides or pages. Think about the update rhythm and socialize it. So this is me online. You have my site. You can always contact me there. I have a blog where I talk about all kinds of stuff, including the enterprise aspects of software product management. I have a site that's getting a little stale. Plan is to relaunch it soon. Keeps getting pushed out, like most products, but has tons of articles, resources for software product managers, interviews, books, that kind of thing. I tweet quite a bit. I'm very active on LinkedIn. You can find me there. And as I said, I'm on the board of ISPMA. Please take a look at ispma.org. Join, get the syllabus, consider taking some training, and being part of this community. So I really appreciate your time. You can ask me questions. Let me make sure that the question facility is turned on. I believe it is. So we have our first question from Rajesh, and he says, is it possible to get the slides? Rajesh, just for you. I am going to make the slides available. I'll probably put them on my site and send out another email. But yes, I would be happy to make the slides available. Are there other questions? I'm curious to hear how folks are handling strategy in their organizations. Was there something that you thought was missing? Maybe something we have time, another 20 minutes until the top of the hour. If there are questions, happy to answer them. And there's quite a bit of delay between when I talk and when you see it and when you can type your questions, so I will just vamp for a few minutes. There are a couple of slides I can show while we're waiting. As I said, I do a lot of training. Most of that is presence training. So I schedule trainings in different places, either where I live here in Heidelberg, Berlin. I also do in-house training, so I can come to a company, train all their product managers. And I've taken this 3-day course that has certification, and I've put it online. So if you're in a geography where you just can't make it to a training, you can study at your own pace. You can do exercises. We can arrange for some coaching. Right now, I give a coaching session away free when you register for the training. For participants who have registered for this webcast, I'm making a special offer. I put this in here and forgot to update the date from the last webcast that I did. But if by the end of July you contact me, I will give you half off. So the retail tuition, it's over 8 hours of lectures. There are all kinds of exercises and resources. It's me talking, a video of me talking with slides. So very much like this webcast, except we go into a lot more detail, cover a lot more territory about software product management, and would be happy to give you half off if you contact me by the end of July. So I'll take a quick peek back here to see if we have any other questions, and we don't. It's Friday, so I'm sure people are ready to start their weekends, wrap up the work week. I really appreciate you participating in the webcast. I enjoy these things. I'm going to try to get back into more or less a monthly rhythm. So you should expect to see something sometime in July. I haven't scheduled it yet. I see there's another question. What can be main steps for creating strategy for existing product? Yeah, I would just take the sections. I can make the PowerPoint available to you too. A great place to start, I think, is with the business model, a business model canvas, either the business model canvas or the lean canvas. It kind of changes the way you think about your product, makes you look top down, and will give you input for things like the business plan, will help you identify segments, positioning, problems. A lot of the slides that we saw in the strategy document could have started as things that I put on the lean canvas. So that's where I would start. And another important input is strategy above you. So if your business unit or your organization, sometimes what I see a lot are strategy slides. There was some offsite or there was some event, they did some planning, there's a set of slides, get those as an input because you obviously want to align with those things. I hope that's helpful, Aiden. If not, ping me and be happy to elaborate a bit more. What is your advice to come to the strategic before you make the document, to the strategy, sorry? For example, innovation sessions with stakeholders. Well, that's part of the strategy, is figuring out what your stakeholders and what the market needs. So I would start with stakeholder analysis. Think about who your stakeholders are. Obviously, customers. Do you have partners, executive leadership? There are tools you can use to help prioritize your stakeholders, and I think that's a great idea to go talk to them. So get input from your stakeholders. That's one source of inspiration for your strategy. The other one should be, what you are trying to achieve. You should also get some market insight. And customers and markets are not the same thing. Customers have already bought from us. The market or the group of people who could buy our product, and you need to chase that down. So don't just talk to people who have already purchased your product. Look at the market. A really big opportunity out there of a segment that you haven't taken advantage of yet, or that you haven't explored yet. So I think, yeah, I hope that's helpful. Once again, I know there's some delay. It is summer in Germany and I am feeling it. I'll have a quick drink of water and let's see if there are any more questions. Yeah. So guys, I think now we're getting close to the end. Really love doing these things. Really enjoyed it. I hope this was helpful. Okay, wait, I have a product strategy, but I don't update it regularly. It is a great input which you gave to share it often to colleagues. Thanks so much. What if the sales colleagues are not so impressed by my strategy? I find the sales guys aren't so optimistic. Yeah, it's tough out there. So we can have a much rosier picture in the lab than people have in the field. And it's a matter of engaging with them and tweaking them and challenging them a little bit. It's not your job. It's your job to create the strategy, but that doesn't mean it has to be all your input. So try to get specific input from here. What doesn't seem realistic? What won't work? What is missing? Help me shape this. My goal is to create a product that you can sell. So sometimes it's a personality thing. Sales guys can be pretty difficult. It's hard to get their time in the first place. But try to use this as an artifact to get structured feedback from them. Don't let them just say, oh, I'm not sure about that. No, show me specifically. And maybe what you do is present the presentation, and after every couple of slides, say, are you guys on board with this? Does this make sense? Do these goals make sense to you? Does this vision make sense? Do we have the right segments? And at the end, you know, what I like to do is write up minutes and send them to management and say, yes, we're in agreement. That tends to drive some interesting conversations. I thought I saw something change here, but I don't see a different question. So everybody, this is becoming a pattern, but this time I'm serious. Thank you very much for attending. Take a look at my site. If you'd like to attend presence training, I've actually got one coming up next week. That's super short notice. Got one here in Heidelberg, but there are still seats available there. There's some other dates scheduled later in the year in Berlin and Frankfurt. If your company needs all your product managers trained, contact me. If you need some coaching, let me know. Have a great weekend, guys, and look to hear a little bit more from me. And I hope to see you next month and in future months. Bye, everybody.